welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Mother Figure. Mother Figure is a maternal wellness company that makes it easier for moms and moms-to-be to get support. And today's episode is brought to you by Original Sprout. The Bundle of Joy is the newest addition to their family of vegan products. And we'll hear more from our sponsors later, but at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you will find a sponsor page. And all of our sponsors are there. And if you need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, you can scroll down and enter your email address, and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
Oh, gosh, I do. I pulled it up earlier, and now here I am listening to you talk.
And not on you. Is it getting hot?
I know,
Are you
right?
Sweating?
And this, I will say I had a hard time picking one today because there was one that I really wanted to do, but I think I might save it for our Miss episode, which we're collecting a lot of really good stuff for our Miss episode.
My list is already too long right now.
Yeah, so I might save that one. So I do have another one that I want to do today. Oh gosh, no, what did I do with it? Stand by.
As the beads of sweat build up on Dianne's forehead.
What is wrong with me? I know. Okay, so I got it. And this came to iTunes. So thank you so much for putting this on iTunes so people can find us a little bit better. Favorite podcast ever. This podcast has truly shaped my breastfeeding journey so far. I started listening during my pregnancy and I'm 8 weeks postpartum, still making my way through the episodes. This podcast is just what I needed to confidently walk this path of motherhood and breastfeeding. I really do think I would have supplemented my baby at the hospital. She had jaundice, had I not learned so much from listening to your episodes. In a society that barely supports new mothers or breastfeeding, this podcast is a glimmer of hope. It's funny, intelligent, informative, and you women challenge societal views and answer all the questions. Breastfeeding is more beautiful, natural, and simple than we are all led to believe. I seriously reference this podcast daily, and I recommend it to all breastfeeding parents. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. And one of the reasons why I picked this is because we are going to talk about like relationships and breastfeeding today. And when she said like in a society that barely supports new mothers or breastfeed, like that, it all goes along with it. Right? Like it all just goes along with that. And there's so much intertwined in this breastfeeding relationship. And that's like kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Totally.
Thank you so much for sending that to us.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad, like it gives me so much, like, I don't know, it warms my soul when people say, because I learned A, B, and C on the podcast, I made a different decision. And like that education is so important. Like be informed. It's so important to be informed.
Yeah, that's so empowering. And you get to decide when you have all the information, then you get to decide what is right for you.
I know. I love it. I just think it's amazing.
And then it's more, you feel more confident, you feel more secure in your, relationship.
Yeah. And it's really hard. It's really hard to like go against the machine,
Yep. Totally.
So today we are going to talk about how breastfeeding affects relationships and all sorts of relationships.
Yes.
I feel like
all of your relationships.
relationships.
In case you didn't notice, they've all been affected.
And the reason why I was going to pick like in the beginning, I said, I almost went with this other one, but I'm going to save it for myths because it was information. It was erroneous, mythical, I should say, information that she received from her pediatrician. And it's like that impacts those relationships too, right? And we don't think about it like that, but it's like you have this provider that you trust, that you go to, that you want to believe in. And then all of a sudden they tell you something that you're like, what? And now you've just broken that trust. Instead of just saying, you know what? I'm not really sure about that. Let me put you in touch with somebody who might know better.
Yeah.
Now you've broken that relationship.
Yeah.
So,
and you've made somebody feel just like, like you can't, they're not there for you. They're not the support that you thought they were.
Right.
And you don't have anybody because you already don't have many people, right? When you have a baby, there's, at least for me, I was the first one. I know this happens for a lot of people. I was the first one of my friends to have a baby. So it's not like I even had anybody like that. I was like all alone. And then I go to the doctor, like, okay, here's one person who's just like in my world right now. And they're also giving you weird information, and they'll make you feel like shit too. Like the way they talk to you sometimes, if you have, the way they say things, the way they treat you, and, treating even just speaking of the breastfeeding relationship, like it's kind of take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so horrible.
It leaves you to reaching out to strangers. And I know people don't probably think of us necessarily as strangers because you're hearing our voices every week, which is fine with me. Because when I get emails, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's a total stranger. It's like, oh, okay. Like I feel like we already have relationships with listeners, Totally. I really do feel like that. But then, sometimes you're reaching out just in these random Facebook mom groups and stuff like that, just for information. It's like, because the person that you're supposed to have a relationship with is not leading you down the right path.
Right.
And that is really frustrating and just confusing.
Yeah. And the funny thing about the listener thing, which I just thought about right now, is like when I'm going through my messages, I'll be like, because other people send me messages too who like know the Instagram page, but maybe don't know that I have a podcast. Because sometimes I'll be like, do you know that I have a podcast? And then there's an episode about this. And they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know. But then people send messages and they're like, hey, I love your podcast, blah, blah, blah. And they ask, and I'm like, okay, it's a listener. Okay. Yeah. Front of the line. Here we go.
I know
it. Here, like, and let me, okay, here's a listener. This is like, I feel like the listeners, like, I never really thought about it until you just said that. But like, I'm like, okay, this is one of our people.
Yeah, it's one of our people.
So like, here, I'll help you. Like, yeah.
And speaking of that, I'm just going to take this little like intermittent thing here for a second because I meant to do it after the review. And I totally forgot because I got on a tangent about the review.
Because we really want to talk about this episode.
Yes, we do. But one of our listeners was so generous to send us some wines from her winery. And it's Darling's Winery.
She has a winery.
I know.
I mean, hello. How cool is that? Somebody who owns a winery listens to our podcast. That's awesome.
It's so amazing. And she sent us some wine. So thank you so much because we were just, and it had like, she had this little booklet that, came with the wines with her and her baby in it. And it's so amazing. And one of the things, one of the reasons that she, I think, found us was because she doesn't have a lot of family near her. So like, she is kind of like on her own, like her family's mostly in the East Coast and she's on the West Coast doing her wine gig. So it really is, we kind of bring people together in this way.
This
and
totally relates. Yeah. I mean, like, and this is what happens because we don't have our relationships. We don't feel supported in our lives. This is exactly what happens to me. I created this huge, not just a badass breastfeeder, but this big, like a lot of friendships online in the beginning because I didn't have anyone around me that was like breastfeeding a toddler or was like sharing a bed, with their baby or breastfeeding, whatever. Any of those things weren't around me. I didn't have anybody around me. And I just like was going online, which was like, 10 years ago was like the thing. I mean, it still is, obviously, but I mean, like Facebook and things like that. And I created all these like good friends, like people that eventually after a year or so, like traveled from like the East Coast and the West Coast to come all of us to meet up here in Chicago.
Aww.
I know, like they were like my best friends and I never knew them.
Yeah.
And this is what we do. And this is this person with this, with the listener with the winery is like, this is how it's happening. We're all connecting online because like, if we all lived in the same city, we could hang out, but like everybody lives, their isolated lives everywhere. And we don't have, our relationships are changing. The ones that we had before are, oh my God, I have so many fucking stories. Okay. I mean, it's just like, I remember having a baby and I'll stop ranting in a minute, and all the friends, like I was the first one, like I said, to have a baby. But then all of these friendships that I had, I suddenly felt really distant from them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't feel close to them anymore at all. And they're like, let's come over. We want to come over and hang out with you and the baby. And I was just like, I don't want you to.
It's weird.
And then you put on top of that people struggling with postpartum depression or anxiety, or you have partners. We've talked about partners with postpartum depression. And I feel like we're being very disorganized with the topics that we're talking about. So I'll be quiet and let Dianne talk.
No, it's totally a thing. So yeah, so Darling Wines, thank you so much. Cause she actually emailed with some questions. And then, as we emailed back and forth a little bit, she was like, hey, I'd love to, share some wine with you. So that was super sweet. So thank you so much.
We're not trying to get stuff from everybody else. We're just saying.
Yeah, no, that was just
it's not
really
like you have to send us something if you send us an email. The email is a gift in itself.
But that was just, we wanted to make sure that we, thank you. That was really, that was a very kind of out of her way thing to do. So that was very sweet. And when we first started saying, okay, let's talk about relationships, like my mind was going to automatically to like how it impacts and how people can almost feel that separation, like partners can sometimes feel separated and not bonded, and grandparents. And, I had somebody the other day who was like, the baby's like 6 weeks old, I think at this point, but maybe a month. She hadn't started pumping yet, which thank good, good for her. I love that you're just breastfeeding and, not pumping yet, especially when it's not necessary. And she wasn't going back to work right away. And she's like, oh, I'll probably start soon because, I'm getting a lot of, pushback from the grandparents that they want to feed, and it's like, it's stuff like that, how it impacts, like everybody wants to get their hands on this baby and be able to take that piece. Well, for some reason, it's the feeding, right? Like everybody wants
to say feed. That. It's like, why do we focus so much on the feeding? There's so much you can do with a baby.
There's so much.
It's like you can do skin to skin. You can rock them. You can walk them. You can sing to them. You can read to them.
You can bathe them. Yeah.
Give them a bath and get them dressed. And, you but we focus so much on the feeding. Like, what is that?
Mm-hmm. So it is really, it's crazy. And then I thought about I was reading that email and I thought about, oh my gosh, like how it impacts your relationship with providers. Cause you could be totally into your pediatrician or your OB for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden they give you this really, really questionable information. And you're like, all right, I'm done. I see that happen all the time.
Yes,
all the
time. Even just a passing comment, like about something that's kind of like trivializes, breastfeeding or something that's really important to you, and they kind of just make a passing comment. That's like, I know for me, I'm like, you're dead to me.
Right. Like I feel unheard. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I just like, I'm like, oh my God, I will never be able to see you in the same light again. Like I just can't, like, it's so insulting and it's just such a violation.
Yeah, it really is. It is. And that's kind of, now I feel like it's so far reaching. Like there's so many arms to this, it's not just about, okay, my partner wants to, be able to give a bottle so he can feel bonded. It's like, it's not even that anymore. There's so much more to it than just that.
Or like the sexual relationship.
Oh yeah.
And we've always, my husband's always, touched my boobs. And now I'm like, feel like punching somebody when they touch my boobs.
Or you're so touched out. You don't want anybody touching you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember I told this story before, but I was talking about maybe I was talking about sex or bodies or something like that. And how it changes after breastfeeding. And somebody commented, they're not fun bags anymore.
Oh, ew.
I thought that was so funny.
Oh my God.
Your boobs go from some people are very sexual about their boobs, and then you have a baby and you're breastfeeding your baby, and it's like your whole relationship. We were talking about this before we hit record. Your relationship with yourself changes. Your relationship with your body changes.
And that was something that I definitely wanted to make sure we had on our list today too, because it really does. I mean, and not just for you, but I think even, partners look at you differently. And I think I felt like that with my first husband, the father of my kids, because it's like our sex life basically stopped after we had kids. And I think he, part of it, and I did, and I don't know, because we never had a conversation because we weren't very good communicators, but obviously because we're not married anymore. But I really think some of it was I remember reading about it because I was felt so rejected. And I remember, reading how when a partner is involved in the whole process of, having a baby and everything, that sometimes they start to look at you as a mother figure, not as a woman anymore.
Oh my God.
And it becomes a very blurry line, and
I feel
that's just so much.
I feel like that is such a symptom of a sick culture.
Oh God.
Where people have just these detached or dysfunctional relationships with their mother. And then, they see you as a mother their mother or, and then they can't have sex with you. And it's like the Madonna whore complex.
Right. I mean, and that was I remember even feeling like, okay, I basically am just your mother right now, because he'd be like, all right, where's my wallet? Where are my shoes? I'm going to work. See you later. Have a good day. Yeah. I'm like, what am I, your mom? Like, it just,
that's
it was
the thing. Yeah, that's the thing, is that like a lot of people, especially a lot of men in our culture, are like giant babies.
Right. And that's kind of where your relationship evolves to. Like, you end up just taking care of the whole family. And it becomes, I don't know. It just, not that that's necessarily related to the breastfeeding, but I feel like it's kind of is in a way, because you just, this whole parenting as a whole, the parenting choices that you make impact your relationships around you so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should we do some ads and then
because then there's stuff I definitely want to.
I know. I think that Dianne has a whole list of things she wants to talk about, which I don't think she's talked about yet. I don't think she's done any of it yet.
No, I've done some of it for sure. Stuff floats around in my brain.
Right.
So.
All right. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mother Figure. Mother Figure is a maternal wellness company that makes it easier for moms and moms-to-be to get support. Mother Figure offers a directory that connects families with lactation consultants, doulas, pelvic floor physical therapists, and more nationwide. A magazine that spotlights real mom stories and a need-to-know info from experts. And maternity clothing that's beautiful, functional, and machine washable. Mother Figure's multitasking maternity bra is a hands-free pumping, nursing, and everyday bra that's been featured in Romper, Parents, Scary Mommy, and more. It's Ucotech certified and has been called one of the best nursing and pumping combo bras on the market. Check it out at shop.motherfigure.com and use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. That's BADASS15, shop.motherfigure.com. And today's episode is also brought to you by Original Sprout. Original Sprout carries safe, effective, and pediatrician-tested shampoos, conditioners, styling, and body care products produced and packaged in California, USA. Original Sprout's newest addition to its family of vegan products is the Bundle of Joy. This is a woven basket full of Original Sprout products, swaddled in a white hand towel and fastened with a big chrome safety pin. The Bundle of Joy makes the perfect baby shower gift bundle, or just a great way to say congratulations to the expecting mom in your life or yourself. With a retail value of over $120 and is being offered at the introductory price of $74.99. As a Badass Breastfeeder listener, you can take an additional 25% off this introductory price. Go to originalsprout.com and use code BADASS and get this bundle for $56.25. That's a total savings of $60, making it affordable to give the gift of clean and safety-tested personal care products to those that you care about. And yourself, I will keep saying. I like buying myself gifts too.
Oh. Well, if not you, who else is going to buy them?
There's more. Okay. Wow. These sponsors and their promo codes, they can be found at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com in our show notes under this episode. Our show notes will also include further information about things we talk about in this episode, and also at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. You will find our breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
And okay, I was making a list. Oh, one quick thing I want to say about Mother Figure for the lactation consultants that are listening, because I know we do have a lot that listen, because we get messages from them. You can actually go on Mother Figure. They have a registry and put awesome. Your info in there. I don't know if you mentioned that or not.
I don't think I did. No, I didn't mention that.
Because I was making my list. I was half listening. So you can go on there and like make a profile so that people can find you, which is great. And it's free. So definitely, if you're a lactation consultant, you're listening, hop on there, make yourself a little profile on Mother Figure.
Cool.
Check out their stuff. Yeah. So, all right. So a couple of things that I definitely want to talk about. We were talking about how it impacts like your own body, but what about like that, that body image piece of it. Do you know how many people message into us saying, I'm not losing my baby weight yet because I'm breastfeeding. Because some people will lose weight very quickly with breastfeeding and some people just do not. It's not a guarantee that if you're going to breastfeed, you're just going to drop weight. That is not any kind of like guarantee. I know that people put it out there that that's a bonus. Not always a guarantee. And for whatever reason, because of our society, I say for whatever reason, but we all know the reason. We all think we need to just lose our baby weight the minute we have our baby. And it just doesn't work like that sometimes. But a lot of times we go, oh, it's because I'm breastfeeding still. I'm not dropping this weight. And you just start to feel so like gross about your body. And it's like, you just made a baby.
You just made a human being.
Just made a human being.
And then we start hating ourselves because of the fat content on our body. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Society has driven us insane.
And a lot of times we go back to, it's because you're breastfeeding. It's because you're breastfeeding. You're not going to lose the weight until you're done breastfeeding. Or you can't go on a diet because you're breastfeeding, blah, 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 blah. And like none of that has to do with it. And you should never hate your body because of breastfeed. Well, because of anything, but especially feeling like, well, I feel stuck because I want to make sure that my baby has my breast milk, but I feel like I can't go back to my body. But we do hear that a lot of times as a reason for people weaning too, is they like, I want my body back. So I'm going to wean. Yeah. But that's what society has done to us.
Yeah. And there's nothing we can do about it. Like there's nothing, it's not like a tongue tie where you can call lactation and get this, like, this is not something that we can fix. Like all we can do is acknowledge that this is the world that we live in and acknowledge it with yourself. This is what you can do. You can say, okay, I'm having these feelings about my body. And I know that this is because I live in this culture that, values skinny bodies over bodies that have fat on them. And, all you can do is just like not acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's no way out. It's, I even the people that preach, body positivity, we're all struggling with it. Mm-hmm. It's just an ongoing struggle.
The other thing too that I thought of when you were talking about when you were the first of your friends to have kids, and I was kind of that same way too. What about when you have friends that have babies that didn't breastfeed? Like how awkward is that? Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be because we all make choices that are best for our lives, right? But it just is. And I find that even as a lactation consultant, when I meet people that say, oh, what do you do? Or they know what I do and maybe they didn't breastfeed, it is awkward. And I think I might have written a blog post about this years ago. It is super awkward. So people, when I meet people and they ask what I do and I tell them, they either tell me about how wonderful their breastfeeding relationship was, or they're like, oh, and they turn around and walk away. It's just people don't want to, if they weren't a breastfeeding family, they don't even engage in conversation about my job, which is weird when you're hanging out with people on a regular basis and everybody else is talking about their jobs.
Yeah, I know, because people feel judged, like you're going to judge them for not doing it. And
exactly.
I know this is what happens too with me. And people are just like, oh, they'll find out that I breastfed for a really long time or something. And they'll just be like, oh, I couldn't. Oh, it's immediately about them. And it's like, well, we aren't even talking about you. We're talking about me. And, that same thing with home birth, because I didn't have friends with the friends that were breastfeeding with my first. I kind of had to go out and find them. But I had a ton of friends when I had a home birth. And then they were like, oh, how was the birth? Or, where, whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I had a home birth. And they would immediately, people still do this. Oh, I couldn't have a home birth because of da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, nobody asked. I don't care where you had your baby. I didn't tell you. You asked me.
So and now you're going to judge me. Yeah.
Well, they feel like I'm going to judge them because they didn't have a home birth or something. It's not even home birth. I feel like is an even bigger stretch than breastfeeding. Cause you just don't, not everybody wants to have a home birth. That's really outside in our culture, outside the lines. People get really funky about this.
It is.
Your family really too. Mm-hmm. Your mother, if you yourself weren't breastfed and, your parent, it's going to be your mom. They can get really snooty about it, feeling defensive and about, or your mother-in-law,
Yeah. And we get those emails a lot too. How do I deal with family that doesn't approve of my parenting decisions, that want me to wean because I'm at a certain age, or that, think that the baby's doing a certain thing. And that's because, I'm breastfeeding them. So now they won't go to anybody else. And it's like that. No, that is not.
Sometimes they just step in too, and they'll start doing things. Like I had to have a conversation with my parents. I was just like, you need to back off. Like, we are not co-parenting here. Like, we are the parents. Josh and I are the parents. And like, they'll step in. Like I've gotten emails where it's like, well, my mother-in-law thinks that the baby should have this many ounces at a feeding. So when I'm gone, she's just feeding him that, feeding the baby this much.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just doing it, even though they're being told not to.
Yeah.
Like, huh?
The respect is
what the hell?
I know. There's really not a lot of respect behind it.
It's
crazy.
A
lot of it does come from them saying, well, because they didn't breastfeed, this is how much they were giving their children.
Yeah.
So it must be the right thing to do.
And I honestly think that people are just driven by, their own regrets or, their own feelings of just like, well, I'm going to just insert myself into these people's lives and not respect their boundaries because of some sort of, their own internal struggle of seeing you parenting differently than they did. Or, I mean, that's what it is, right? You're
right.
Parenting differently. We're all mostly parenting probably differently than we were parented or our partners were parented. And then when they see that, it's just like, they get all their panties in a bunch about it.
It really gets thrown off. It really does. In my family, like I had one sister that breastfed. She breastfed, but she didn't she definitely did like a combo feeding thing when she went back to work. I'm really the only one that breastfed exclusively for a significant amount of time. And my other sisters didn't even attempt it. So when with me, they really didn't say anything, they were pretty good. Like they didn't, question. My mother, of course, would say stuff here and there because she didn't breastfeed either. So I was really the only person in my family that was kind of a diehard. And I became a diehard because nobody else in my family was. And everybody kind of, I got the pushback from my mom when I was pregnant. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do it just to piss you off. So, when my niece had her baby 2 years ago, and she would, when she was pregnant, actually just during pregnancy, and she would ask about breastfeeding stuff. And people in the family would it's like, well, why is anybody else but me giving her information here? Like this, nobody else should be giving her information on breastfeeding because nobody else did it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And
I have told people, when I've done educational stuff in the past, especially when I was working very heavily in the community. I don't as much anymore, but when I was really out there in the community, what I would tell people, don't listen to anybody who hasn't been a breastfeeder. And you hate to put it out there like that because you don't want to shut off people's support systems. But it's if you're not just going to smile and nod and support the parent, you're just going to give her information that you don't even know is right. Yeah. That's not okay.
I know. I feel like smiling and nodding is not popular enough.
It really isn't.
We really need to bring back the smile and nod.
Oh my God.
We got to bring it back. And we need to turn it into it needs to be the next fad. Smile and nod.
Oh, I mean, when I was working at the pregnancy program, I was working at a pregnancy program in the city here at one point. Oh my God, I loved it there. They were so great. And I did a lot of childbirth education and breastfeeding education. And they would come in the lady at the bus stop told me. And I'm like, can we not listen to the lady at the bus stop, please? Or this one girl was like, I don't know. I told my mom I was getting all this breastfeeding education. She said, don't listen to those white people. Oh my God. But it was I was like, if it's not me telling you, don't listen to them. I kind of got to that point where I was like, please don't listen to the lady at the bus stop. Please don't listen to some random person. It just is not going to work. But one of the things because there is a lot of research behind support and how support backs into breastfeeding. And there is a lot of stuff about that. So we're not just sitting here talking about it oh, you should support your breastfeeding family. It's not just because it's a good thing to do or it's a nice thing to do. There's actual research behind it. And one of the studies that I was looking at, and we've known this forever, right? We've known forever that if you're supported, you do better. like one of the
Yeah,
biggest
duh.
reasons, I know, right? One of the biggest reasons that a breastfeeding parent weans, or I don't want to say fails because that's such a bad word, but what are the reasons they wean earlier than they intend to, or don't reach their goal? Yes, that's exactly what I want to say. One of the reasons is if they don't have partner support. That's one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah,
whoever that partner is, that partner could be the parent, the other parent, the partner could be their mother, the partner, whoever that partner support is. If they don't have it, that's one of the biggest reasons for weaning. And one of the research studies that I pulled out for this said, consistent with wider social support research, awareness of receiving support is associated with negative health consequences. However, where partner support is provided in a responsive manner as a part of breastfeeding team, thereby promoting a woman's sense of autonomy and self-efficacy, breastfeeding outcomes improve. All you need is somebody to say, you're doing a good job. I support you. Not, well, what did you eat today? The baby's fussy. Or, I don't know. Are you sure the baby had enough to eat? Or, but yeah, maybe you should try to lose that baby weight and go on a diet, but you can't because you're breastfeeding. None of that is helpful. None of that is helpful.
Yeah, I know. And especially if your partner is like an American white male, they're probably going to be, feel a little bit entitled to your body, just because we have this this patriarchy, of like men feeling kind of entitled to, where I'm the man of the house. And if you don't have a partner like this, that's cool. I don't either. So of course we don't all have partners like that, but we have to admit that this exists.
It does exist.
And many people do have these partners where it's like, you're not giving me, enough sexual pleasure, or like the baby is more bonded to you than it is to me. And, I'm feeling very crabby about that. Or, and these things of just, we think of like head of the household, male head of the household. And then you have this, and now suddenly you're kind of the main focus, and the baby is more bonded to you, because we know this is what happens, especially with the breastfeeding relationship, is that the baby's going to be on you more, and they're going to be real fussy if they're not on you. And so the partner's going to feel like, oh, the baby likes you more. Or they're going to feel like they're just, I feel like I told this story before, but we were watching this, comedian, and I can't remember who it was, but he was like one of these comedian, who like talks about like serious things and then makes jokes about it, or whatever. It was kind of like this, it was different than like just like a stand-up thing. It was, anyway, he's telling the story about like when his wife had a baby, and how she just needed so much, and she was kind of off on, doing her thing and very busy, taking care of the baby. And he was like, now I understand why men leave.
Huh.
And my jaw hit the floor. I was like,
wow,
what? Like, this is what people think? Like, you're not the center of attention for a second?
Wow.
Like, and now you understand why men leave? My God.
When I got pregnant with Nathan, he's my first, and it was not planned even a little bit. And like not even in the picture, not even like in the 5-year plan. Like it was nowhere. Mm. And I remember his father looked at me and was like, and he even said, well, what about me?
Ugh.
And I was like, you're going to have to get over yourself. Like, this is, and it just, I have another mom that she's been going to my group for a very long time, and very successful breastfeeding parent with her first baby, and has had pushback from her husband for months and months and months and months, really based on the whole premise of this breastfeeding thing is getting in my way. Like, that's really what it's based on.
Yeah, right.
And I think a lot of it has to do, and we've talked with her about like, this really could be like a postpartum, postpartum mood disorder issue for him.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
For sure. Because his life changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it comes down to. Your life changes and we're not ready for that. And those partners are just like, what the hell? There's in all my years of doing this, there was this one partner that like totally stands out in my head. Was like, I don't know if that I'll ever see this again. And it was a family, it was a home birth. And it was, I think their 7th or 8th baby. It was not like their first child or anything. But it wasn't like their 12th. I've had some of those too, but it was like 7 or 8. I think it was like 7 or 8. And the dad was like, he was great. He goes, I know that for the first year, that baby's hers. I have nothing to do with this. And it was like, you're amazing because that's a little bit more over the top. Like, obviously he's going to have something to do with it,
Yeah.
but he knows that the baby is likely going to want to be with his mother the majority of the time, that she is going to be wearing that baby. She is going to be breastfeeding that baby a lot. She is going to be, giving all her attention to that little baby, and that he is not in the mix of that. And he knew that. And there was no question there. And there was no remorse. And there was no pushback. And there was no nothing. He was like, that baby belongs to her right now. That's the way it is.
Yeah. And this goes back to like understanding newborn behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like he understood that this is what newborns do. This is what babies do,
Right.
And maybe he grew up with, younger baby siblings or something and saw his own mother,
And it's not like, okay, this is a breastfeeding problem, because it's not. Like, none of it is.
Yeah.
But we always make it that. And that's what gets in the way of our relationships. And it's just like, it's not. This is kind of.
Yeah. We've also done a number on the family, the extended family. We think about how humans have survived for so long. It's living in a village setting where there was all of these people taking care of the kids and taking care of the parents. And now we are just in our little houses, just us, and inside of this capitalist society that has driven, this insane workforce. So you have to work constantly. And we've put men kind of in this first of all, we've created these gender roles, right? So we have these men and then we have women, and then men are supposed to go out and they're supposed to earn all the money and work. And then women are, you're supposed to be, taking care of the children or just being second to the man.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and whatever you need is kind of just second or third or fourth or fifth in line to what capitalism needs in order to survive, which is a giant workforce, which is why we don't have maternity leave, right? Because we need people to go back to work. And all of this stuff contributes to just the complete breakdown of the family. And so then now there's a baby and you need these things, and there is absolutely no system in place to support that.
Mm-mm. It's messed up. And like, that's basically
it's messed up, man.
It's messed up, man. But one of the things that I'm like thinking of while you're saying that is the whole, like, not even just maternity leave, but paternity leave, right? So some places now are actually jumping on board with the whole paternity leave thing, which is amazing and fantastic. But there are a lot of partners that do not take it because they're like, well, I need to get back into the workforce, or I can't be away from my job for that long, or I need to bring the money home because, the breastfeeding parent is on maternity leave or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then they still want to be able to be part of this mix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know. It's a very confusing setup. And we don't want to admit that, like, okay, the mother's breastfeeding, therefore she's the one feeding the baby, right? The breastfeeding parent is the one feeding the baby. And everybody else wants to feed the baby too. But at the same time, nobody else is around. So where does that leave things? Like it's a very, very confusing, unsettling setup that we have built for ourselves here.
It is. And we have to think about, and if you think about not that long ago, men weren't even involved at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, they weren't even in the delivery room.
I was about to say they weren't even in the delivery room.
They weren't, you were just on your own. And then, the man of the house was off to work and the woman was at home.
And I mean, and I know
alone.
like a lot of our listeners might be too young to know this, but like, so in my family, I'm the youngest of 4. I'm the only one where my father was in the room. The only one. And that's because that's when they started to allow it. Was when I was born. And my mother was home for us for several years until we were like established in school. And then she went back to work. But I always ask because my father's first language was Spanish. So, but we didn't grow up speaking it. Like my grandparents did, and we heard it all the time. And, my father would speak with them and everything. But I remember even asking my mom all the time, like, why didn't we grow up bilingual? And she's like, because I was home with you. He wasn't. I didn't speak Spanish. I wasn't going to so it was like it was such a traditional role, just right down to the fact that like I was the only one out of all 4 kids that my father was in the delivery room for. Yeah. Like it wasn't that long ago that this started happening. It really wasn't. And I'm sure a lot of the majority of our listeners now are in the age group where they're like, what? That was a thing. It's like, absolutely. That was a thing.
Or it just seems longer ago. Right. Because it's like, oh, well, that was super long ago. But it really wasn't, it was not that long ago. And so we're in a situation where we're like,
yeah, I'm not that old.
No. Right. I mean, it's not that it's like well within, the lifetime of people walking around right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, it's insane to think that this is like better, that we are like several steps forward from this, of getting support and
we're still yelling about the same things.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We still have a long way to go.
Oh my God. It's just like ridiculous.
I know. I feel like we barely talked about all the things that you could talk about on this topic.
Well, the other thing that I was thinking while I was getting ready for this was we should have put it out there, so if anybody has anything that they want to share with us about a partner problem, whether it was, your extended family or the partner that you have right now or anything like that you want to share, we could always do. I feel like every week now we're like, we could do a part 2 because I feel like our topics are really getting we're really delving into some good meaty stuff.
I know. We could have an episode where we just share people's stories. If we get enough stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Then and then you guys can, hear each other's stories too.
And it doesn't feel so alone. A lot of the times when I get messages from people, I'm like, can I share this? Because it would probably be helpful to a lot of other people. And I think we do feel like we're really alone, but we have our little community here. So you're not. And that's why we want to kind of put that out there. You're not by yourself. So yeah. So definitely if you have a partner story that you feel like really impacted your relationship, you can absolutely share it. You don't have to say your name or anything. It's not like we announce everybody's names on here anyway. But we can share it. And we would love to share it with others if that's okay with you. So yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.